All right, so you're thinking about buying a home here in Arizona going into the end of 2023, maybe the early part of 2024, and you're focused on new construction. If you are, it makes sense. There's a ton of incentives out there that builders are offering right now. They're making it very attractive to buyers, and a lot of people are kind of jumping on that bandwagon to see if new construction makes sense for them. But with all the positives of new constructions, we do see people make certain mistakes, and it can take a very positive situation and turn it negatively quickly. So in this video, we're going to talk about our top 5 mistakes that we see people make when it comes to buying a new construction home, and hopefully give you some reasons to, or hopefully give you some ways to potentially avoid that, hopefully have a smooth and positive transaction all the way through. If you think that might be helpful, then stay tuned. All right, let's jump right into it. I've got my good friend Cindy here to join us today. Cindy is an absolute pro when it comes to anything new construction. We'll give you her resume in a little bit. But Cindy, one of the big mistakes, and I know, in all of your experience, you've seen a lot of people make mistakes. One of the big things is planning around a moving target date. And what I mean by that is, like, a lot of times when you're going through new construction, you have these estimated build times that you're given by the builder. And a lot of people kind of stick those dates in their head and plan around them, not knowing that those dates can constantly be moving. So why don't you tell us, what your experience has been with that? Because I know there's a lot of times. You have anything that stands out in your mind that kind of really affected people in a negative way?
Yeah, sure. So construction is an ongoing process, and there's things that can happen. There can be rain. There can be all sorts of things that go on during the process.
It rains in Arizona?
Well, sometimes or whatever.
Yeah.
But for instance, there was a family and she was expecting a baby. They had a house to close, and they had it in their head that the close date was going to be actually a December close right around Christmas. They were all excited to have Christmas in their house, and that home just couldn't make it by the date that they wanted in their head. And so it became kind of an issue when they were wanting to put the Christmas tree up and want to celebrate when it got moved back a couple weeks. So
there's a lot of emotional aspect to it because people plan around dates, they plan around the holidays, or they've got big things happening in their life, like a pregnancy, that type of thing. There's a lot of things that people plan around. And when those dates get moved, it definitely causes some challenges, not only for people that maybe might be in a home that are trying to sell a home. Maybe they're trying to move from one house to another. Maybe they're in a lease and trying to do that. So there's a lot of potential challenges when trying to figure out those dates. But we definitely see a lot of people maybe plan a little bit too much around a guesstimated date and then have their plans completely get thrown out of whack because of that.
Yeah, that is true. So that's what we do to help.
All right, mistake number 2 that we see a lot of people make, and I want to kind of summarize this in a way it's basically making mistakes at the design center if you get a chance to do that. Some builders offer you the chance to completely personalize your house. Other builders are kind of picking out some of the stuff for you. But if you have the opportunity to go start from scratch and go jump into all the options, jump into the design center, the mistake that we see people make is either overspending or not understanding the value that you're going to get out of picking certain things. Cindy, talk to us a little bit about that as well, and kind of how what you've seen people do when it comes to not really knowing, spending a lot of money that doesn't come back to them.
Well, for instance, electrical, you can get really carried away with any of the electrical options that you put in. And when you go on the resale side of it, maybe the person buying your home isn't going to appreciate those, and you spend quite a bit of money if you're going to add a bunch of electrical. Another thing is like carpet versus cabinets. The carpet and the flooring is something maybe possibly you would replace later. However, cabinets, a good upgrade on a cabinet, those cabinets are probably going to be there for sometimes the life of the house. So those are things to think about.
No, it's a lot of reminders. And again, when I remember going when I was under contract on a new house, and one of the funnest things you can do is go to a design center and be like, hey, I get to pick out every single thing I want. But if you don't know exactly what you're doing, you can get carried away, and you can find yourself in a situation where the value doesn't come back to you, or you potentially just price yourself out of buying the house altogether. So you really want to be careful.
A lot in options, yeah, and you just have to kind of keep it in your budget, because that's going to be the payment that you're going to be making
Yeah. So one of the big things, and again, like I've seen Cindy do this with so many people, is like really, really help people dial in like what they should put into their house, because there's a certain amount of upgrades that really add that value that you want to do. And then anything else, don't even touch it.
Yeah. What's the most important thing? You make a list and then you keep it in your budget.
Stick to it. Stick to it.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, here's a fun one that happens a lot, and a big mistake that's made is that people decide to start making large purchases while their house is under construction. And, you know, Cindy, we've both seen this happen a lot. And again, it's understandable. People get excited about moving into a new house, and so they're like, hey, I'm going to go out and buy a lot of new furniture, get it ready to go, get it ready to be delivered when the time's right. I'm going to go buy a new car because I can't have a new house without having a new car parked in my garage. Whatever toys you want, like there's a lot of things that people think about. And why is that bad, Cindy?
Well, first of all, you have a thing called a debt to income ratio. And usually when you get loan approved for a certain amount for a home, that's what you're on contract for. And if you change that debt to income ratio, it makes you not qualify. And I have had, unfortunately, a few times where the couple went out and they switched their older car that was paid for in for like a new $500 or $600, $700 car payment, which is easy to do today. And it made it so they couldn't buy as much house. So they literally had to change floor plans. They had to go from 2,800 square feet down to my 2,200 square foot home. And that wasn't the happiest scenario for them. But
well, thankfully you were able,
into a home.
Yeah, you were able to fix it at least and like get them into a new home. A lot of times people might not qualify altogether. So for anybody who's looking for financing and you start doing those types of things, that's where this can kind of bite you a little bit. And you don't understand that like just small changes within your credit can completely throw that off. And going back to the, we talk about the contract a lot. A lot of that language is in there to talk about it, but a lot of people just overlook it altogether. So it is really, really important to kind of make sure that you don't try to spend too much or change any of the things that could affect your credit.
Yeah, just be patient and wait until that close date. The second you close escrow and it's all done, you've got your keys. Then if you feel like you want to trade that old car in for a new one, or you need a house full of furniture, go ahead and do it.
So, I mean, we can guide you guys on that. Your lender should be able to guide you on that. So talk to your lender as well. We can kind of guide you down that path. If you're paying cash, then obviously spend as much money as you want. But if you're financing, then make sure that you check all the boxes before going out and making any big purchases. All right, another big one that we find as a potential challenge, and that is choosing the wrong lender. And this is a tricky one because a lot of incentives are tied to using a builder's lender a lot of the time. So that might be the best option. So you might not even have a choice with choosing lenders, but there's so many different moving parts, and some people have specific relationships they have and they want to use specific lenders. It doesn't always work out if you have one that you want to choose. Cindy, talk about that too, because this is another, again, could be a big mistake to make if you don't choose the right lender in the transaction.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen, a lot of people have family members, aunts, brothers, cousins that are in the mortgage business, when sometimes that is so beneficial because they'll do it for no origination fee, or they'll make it a little bit better. But a lot of times I see that not work out the same, particularly with builders, because builders throw a lot of money at getting a rate bought down. They throw a lot of money towards closing costs, and that's to get you in to buy from them rather than do resell. So, our job is to kind of point out to you, okay, if you go with this lender, these are going to be your payments and this is your closing costs, versus if you went to a builder lender, these are the payments and these are the closing costs. Just whatever is best for you and your best interest.
Situation, right. You really have to kind of start going down a list and go on a side-by-side approach on really what's the most beneficial for you. And again, there's so many people that will try to pull you one direction or the other to try to figure out like, hey, what is in your best interest. It just, man, I've seen so many different scenarios where it can kind of cost people either in a higher rate, more closing costs, or losing out on incentives. There's just a lot of situations. Even one of the bigger challenges, and this is not only in new homes, but in resale, but using big banks, I find, is just a horrible mistake altogether. If you're, I don't need to name names, but the bigger banks who offer loan, I just find so many challenges with that. I don't know what your situation or if you've had to deal with that.
That's correct. And also you have to remember the closing date. Sometimes
Right.
big
Exactly.
banks cannot hit those closing dates.
Exactly.
Especially new construction, they might do it a little bit different. They need an inspector to go out before they sign off on an FHA loan. There's all sorts of things that you kind of need to be cautious of. So that's what we're going to help
They
you
don't
do.
care about when the date is to close. They pick their own close date.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always work out with you or the builder. And so, yeah, you got to be careful on who you choose from a lending side. And again, another thing that we can kind of help guide you on. All right, the next one is a pretty big one as well, and it is not understanding the builder contract. This is a potential mistake that people make. And to be fair, like a lot of people, like again, if you like a house, it's kind of like your little Apple thing on your phone that you have to just agree to all the terms, and you're like, I'm not gonna read all these stupid terms. But it does become very important when it comes to builder contracts because there is a lot of language that could potentially end up being a challenge for you. So again, Cindy, talk about some of the things that people need to watch out for when it comes to language in the builder contract, or just making sure that they know what they're getting into.
Well, if you have a good person representing you, they will kind of help you and guide you with the sales agent that works for the builder. They will help you go through it so you do understand the processes of it is the main thing. You know, what's happening with your earnest deposit? When do you have to go to the design center? There's a lot of dates that are very important for you to hit so your house stays on track. Also, there's move-in timeframes they never quote, you know, when a close date is, because they don't really have that yet. Like a resale contract, you're going to say, this is when I close. You don't do that with new construction.
Well, and the other thing, a builder contract is written 100% to protect builders. So they write it for themselves. It's there to protect them so that people can't come back and try to sue them later, because if anybody comes up with a problem, a lot of people are like, okay, well, I'm going to blame the builder, blah, blah, blah. I've seen it a million times, but the builder has to protect themselves too, or they're not going to be able to build homes. So there is a kind of an understanding why they do what they do, but you really have to kind of get into the nitty gritty sometimes so that you don't bite yourself in the butt by making a decision. One of the other examples that kind of comes to my mind when it comes to not understanding the contract for, clients is I've heard situations where, when you're looking to have an outside inspector come in, because a lot of people are like, hey, look, the builder's going to do their inspections on the property. They have their people, but when you're getting ready to close, it's important to potentially have a second pair of eyes that is not part of the builder to come take a look at the property. And there's a lot of different language in the contract on what's allowable. And so that is something that we're here to try to protect you guys on too, to make sure that you understand like what you can do. I don't know if you have any example that you've thought of, Cindy, or having that come up or anything that people need to know.
Yeah, well, every new build contract is a little bit different, and they all have different procedures and policies about when an inspector can go in, if one can go in, and that different time frame of how that's going to happen. So it's done correctly, and so they get the information back to the customer as soon as they can.
Yeah, so it's, again, a lot of people want it done. It's just part of the long part of the builder contracts that you need to know about. So just know that like misunderstanding that contract can be a big mistake. All right, Cindy, so the overall point I think we want to get across to you guys as the viewers and kind of, watching and kind of going through the situation and trying to prepare yourself. One of the big things, if you kind of put all 5 things together, is really important to have representation before you just go to the builder yourself. And the reason why that is we can kind of help guide you into all of these things. And there's a lot more things than these 5 mistakes that we've talked about, but there are a lot of moving parts. And I brought Cindy in here because she has 10,000 homes, $1 billion in business. I don't know. I'm being a little sarcastic, but it's a lot of
27 years of just new construction.
Yeah.
I worked for various builders, and I know good ones and not so good ones, but for the most part.
But just in the last 3 years, you've probably done over 300 deals on your own.
Oh, yeah.
So
I've seen all the things, all the mistakes and all the.
There's a lot of experience.
But there's a lot of positive stuff too. So
yeah,
that's what we try to help you.
And I think that's important. Like Cindy will tell you so many good things about working with builders. And so the goal is to not try to scare you away from doing new construction. The goal is to try to make it as smooth and easy as possible and not put yourself in a position where you're going through any pain through it. Because again, if you're trying to choose between one or the other, between resale and new construction right now, if new construction makes sense from a location perspective, there are so many incentives and pricing options that you can get into right now that are very helpful, especially with what we're dealing with on the interest rate side. So we want to try to help guide people into those more affordable options if we can, and also obviously give people the opportunity to get into a house that's never been lived in, so you don't have to deal with somebody else's problems that they had in the past.
Or their toenails in the carpet.
Yuck. I don't want to think about that. But if you guys have any questions, make sure to reach out to us. We're here to help guide you in the right direction when it comes to finding a new home here in Phoenix. If it's new construction, if it's resale, whatever's right for you, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, however you want to get a hold of us. We got your back, and until the next video, we'll catch you later.